In Regency England, a woman's value was strictly calculated in thousands of pounds and her proximity to a title. Take the three Ward sisters. Maria struck gold, capturing a baronet and his massive estate. Frances married a penniless marine, sinking into poverty. And the third married a clergyman with a decent living. Their lives were entirely dictated by the economics of the marriage market. Looking at the architecture of a place like Mansfield Park, you see exactly how this hierarchy works in practice. When Frances's poverty becomes too much, her wealthy relatives agree to take in her 10-year-old daughter, Fanny Price. But Fanny isn't arriving as a beloved family member. She is a charitable burden imported to relieve her mother's overflowing household, and she is expected to know her place. While her glamorous cousins occupy the lavish lower rooms, Fanny is physically pushed to the absolute margins. She is tucked away in the chilly white attic at the very top of the house. Her physical isolation perfectly maps her social isolation. Her Aunt Norris makes sure Fanny never forgets this gap. While Fanny's wealthy cousins are praised for memorizing the Roman emperors and learning French, Fanny is constantly mocked for her ignorance of geography and the arts. Her aunt weaponizes these superficial accomplishments to constantly remind the girl of her inferiority. There is only one exception to this treatment. Her older cousin, Edmund, notices the terrified girl crying on the stairs and actually takes the time to help her write a letter to her brother. His quiet kindness, giving her paper and ruling the lines, becomes her single emotional anchor in a deeply hostile environment. So we have a terrified, uneducated 10-year-old girl with zero social currency, trapped in a house designed to ignore her. How does a person with no leverage survive a rigid class system built to crush her? The answer arrives in the form of Mary and Henry Crawford. They are wealthy, devastatingly charming, and utterly devoid of a moral compass. They play games with people's emotions simply because they can afford to. Usually the patriarchal owner of the estate, Sir Thomas, keeps everything in strict order. But when business calls him away to Antigua, the estate's governing authority vanishes. The young people are suddenly left entirely to their own devices, and their unchecked desires start to run wild. Looking at this map of the neighboring Southerton estate, you can see the strict geometric boundaries of the main house. But during a visit, the group deliberately wanders past locked gates and iron palisades into the tangled, unregulated area known as the wilderness. It is a physical crossing of boundaries that perfectly mirrors their willingness to test the limits of propriety. They push the boundaries even further back at Mansfield Park. The group decides to stage a scandalous, morally ambiguous play. They tear up the billiard room, hire a scene painter, and transform the dignified domestic space into a chaotic theater, prioritizing their own amusement over the rules of the house. Through all of this, Fanny remains seated on the sidelines. She refuses to act in the play. She recognizes the moral rot beneath the Crawfords' glamorous facade and quietly holds her ground even when her cousins mock her for it. The temporary absence of authority exposes the elite characters. Without rules to enforce their good behavior, they instantly abandon it. The marginalized girl in the attic turns out to be the only functioning moral compass on the estate. Henry Crawford decides to make Fanny fall in love with him purely as a cynical game to entertain himself. But the irony is, by spending time with someone who actually possesses genuine integrity, he accidentally falls in love with her. Sir Thomas returns from Antigua, puts a stop to the play, and sees an incredible economic opportunity in Henry's proposal. He aggressively pressures Fanny to accept, treating her hesitation as shocking ingratitude after years of family charity. Fanny says no. She defies the patriarch of the house and the entire economic logic of Regency society, refusing to marry a man she knows lacks a moral center. Sir Thomas decides to punish her. He exiles Fanny away from the comforts of Mansfield Park, sending her back to the noise, dirt, and squalor of her parents' house in Portsmouth. The goal is simple: starve her into submission so she realizes what she's giving up. This is Fanny's ultimate test. She is subjected to severe spatial and social displacement, surrounded by a chaotic family that barely notices her. She has to endure this punishment without compromising her internal integrity. Fanny holds firm in the poverty of Portsmouth for months, and while she waits, the entire facade of high society back in London completely shatters. Maria, who had married a wealthy fool for his money, abandons her husband and elopes with Henry Crawford. The newspaper announces the matrimonial fracas to the world, destroying the family's reputation. Days later, Julia engages in her own reckless elopement. Edmund turns to Mary Crawford for comfort, but finds she isn't horrified by the betrayal itself. She's only upset they got caught. Her cynical, image-obsessed reaction finally breaks the spell, exposing her true nature to him. The characters who relied exclusively on the currencies of wealth and charm self-destructed. They had every social advantage, but because they lacked foundational principles, they collapsed the moment they faced real temptation. Fanny is immediately recalled to Mansfield Park to comfort her devastated aunt. The geography of the estate has entirely inverted. She is no longer the marginalized girl in the attic. She steps into the center of the home as the moral savior of the family. Edmund realizes that Fanny's steadfast virtue is exactly what he has been looking for all along. They marry, and the girl who arrived with nothing inherits the emotional and moral core of the estate. In a world obsessed with surface-level charm, wealth, and transactional value, quiet, uncompromising integrity outlasts everything else. It doesn't need to be loud to win. Sticking to your principles when the entire system demands you compromise is the ultimate form of subversion.